Hello, podcast family. Hope you guys are having a great day. I'm your host, Rocky Roark, and in today's episode of Design Break Podcast, we're going to be expanding upon an earlier discussion we had on the podcast in episode 39, where we talk about the power of agency partners with my two special guests, Mr. Brian Burkett and Mr. Josh Wayne. Hey, guys, how are you doing today?
Hey, Rocky. How you doing, man?
All right, awesome. So, Brian, why don't you give a quick little intro about yourself?
Yeah, I am a freelance developer and designer. I've been working in the industry for 15 plus years. Just came to terms with the fact that I released my first website 25 years ago. Since then, I've been working on the web. I've worked with agencies in-house, and then I've contracted with them. I've worked with a bunch of startups from enterprise level to bootstrap startups to venture-backed startups, e-commerce, and all that fun stuff. I know these two fine gentlemen here through all of that fun agency work. And I started off my career at one of the best agencies, I thought, in San Diego called Digital Telepathy. Learned some design work, learned development there, have an official degree in design, went there, did that. Then went over and met Josh Wayne when I was working at a humanitarian agency, and I gave up the world of startups to try to help the world a little bit. It was a ton of fun, great team. And then from there, I branched out and became a freelancer. And here I am, 10 years later.
Well, awesome. And Josh, why don't you tell us a little about yourself?
Sure. Hi, I'm Josh Wayne. I'm a freelance UX and product designer. I've been doing professional design for the last 18 years and bounced around different agencies and different companies. And that's how I met Rocky and Brian. And I was working at the same agency Brian was at, and I just got crazy burned out and told my boss I was going on sabbatical, and I bought a one-way ticket to Asia and spent the next 2 months backpacking and figuring out what I wanted to do. And on the flight back home, I decided I was going to give freelancing a shot, and 9 years later, haven't looked back.
Yeah, you've done a lot of globe trotting. Both of you have. It makes me super jealous. Yeah, we've known each other. How long have we known each other? I've known Brian longer, but a lot of times, and I've mentioned you guys multiple times on this podcast because I've gotten so much insights into freelancing from both of you because you guys have actually been doing it a lot longer than I have. And, it's just amazing. Both of these guys here are perfect examples of just a wealth of knowledge when it comes to freelancing. In fact, all three of us are part of a Slack channel community called Hustle Muscle. There will be a link down below in the show notes for this podcast, both on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube, where you guys can actually join the community and actually get to talk to me, Brian, and Josh all together.
If you are a freelancer.
If you are a freelancer, if you pass the test.
If you're not a freelancer, go away.
Test.
Yeah, we started that group. I think important to note that because it was so pivotal and vital to the creation of our careers and doing freelancing. Mm-hmm. I had been doing it for a bit myself, a couple of years on my own, Josh as well. And then Rocky started to do it. And I was like, let's just get together and let's talk. And we would chat, once a week, every Friday. We would sit down and we would talk about our businesses, what was working, what's not working. We would borrow ideas from each other and talk about contract stuff. I've stolen ideas from Rocky and how he runs some of his billing. Now Josh is stealing that from me. And it's just kind of trickling down that way. But we all throughout the years, right? We bounce off each other a lot of ideas. So that's kind of the basis of our relationship here as well. Is we're kind of just recording possibly some of what our conversations were on those Fridays.
Yeah, there's lots of situations where people say, actually, that was my idea. No, wait, that was my idea. Remember, on this specific date, I said that. Especially between these two, it's a riot to watch them.
Well, you guys always steal my shit. I'm giving you gold. And the next thing you know, you're like, look what I found.
You know what? That just proves the value of community. And that, when you compare notes around things that, you think there isn't that many ways to do it. But then having that initial conversation with a client or even just how to frame your work, you realize that when you compare notes that there's so much room for improvement and there's so many different ways of doing it and improving it. And that there's just having a community is just invaluable for being better because everyone does these little experiments and figures out different ways of doing it. And then like having that community that's open about sharing that has been huge for all of us. And I don't think I would be where I'm at if it wasn't for like you guys and the other people and like the freelance community.
When do I get my commission check?
Once you cut me.
No, I think, good call. I think that it's also important. Like we very much share ideas too, and I'm open. I'm happy when people take my ideas, and even put, you guys definitely, and I do as well, as we will put our own spin on it, and evolve it, which is a fantastic thing. I'm always happy to see you guys thriving off of the back of my mental labor.
Oh man. Okay.
See, where you've gone wrong is you've never created a brandable term and then become an expert on it on Twitter, dude. See, like,
no, I sprinkle it out there. I'm behind the shadows.
See, that's your problem.
I came up with the term selfie stick before it became a thing. I swear to, I can't swear, but
all right, put
on this podcast, but
put in the title.
I did.
Brian Burkett, creator of the selfie stick.
But no, I do want to say, like, community is very important, especially it's not about having a community of people who are doing the same thing, right? Freelancing, yes, that brings us together as a community. But if you look at each of us, we each do different parts of freelance or different types of freelancing, right? Yeah. Josh with product design, Brian with development and design, me with branding, illustration, and everything. So it's like we all have different focuses. However, we're each able to see how we can bring our expertise, at least with one particular part, freelancing, together and answer each other's questions, help each other out. And I think that's one of the best parts of this is the fact that, we don't have a paid wall that we put things behind. We don't, it's all about helping each other out so that we can be as successful as possible as freelancers.
Yeah.
So today we're going to be talking specifically about agency partners. And the reason why I wanted to talk about that with the two of you was because you were the ones that really pushed me down this road. And it's something you guys have done quite a bit over the years. I think, I can't remember who it was that said that you guys aren't doing it nearly as much anymore. I think it was maybe Brian. You don't have nearly as many.
I think Brian's doing it a lot less than I am.
Yeah.
I'm still,
and so like, I think that it's good to hear the different perspectives from you guys, but Brian, what led you to focus on agency partners as a primary client base in the first place? And what benefits do you feel like you experienced by using this approach?
Yeah. I mean, so when you're starting off freelancing, right, you have to have a craft that you're good at, that you're professional enough to sell, that you can sell for a good amount of money per hour. Right. And so for me, that was development. I always tried to sell myself as a developer, even though I had a design background, and specifically full stack web development. So, and I had a focus on marketing sites, but I loved like web applications and getting involved in that. Right. And so there's a lot that's involved in like getting really good at the craft of what you're trying to sell and provide value with. On top of that, when you're freelancing, you now have to find clients, deal with invoicing and billing and contracts and all of this stuff that, you might not be well versed in the first place. And I was starting my career as a freelancer in my early 20s, and I was just all about design and development stuff. And I had no idea about how that side of business really worked other than, what I could absorb while I was working at agencies. It also just happens to be a fact that when you're working with agencies, there's just so many projects and opportunities that are coming and going for that agency and through the people that are there, because agencies are kind of built around a lot of people who kind of hustle, right? Like if you're a designer or developer, like you kind of have to have that mindset working at an agency, and it's kind of toxic, but like it's a grind, right? And you're always like, but you're learning a lot. You're learning how to work in a fast-paced environment. You're learning how to shift through a lot of different projects. And so that it's just kind of the nature of that business that allows for freelancers to really kind of thrive in that environment. And they're able to take care of the contracts with me. And like, I'll work with their contracts, and I learned how to read contracts now, and I can, I have my own, and I'm a lot more well-versed in that, but like, they'll help you out. Like, we're going to pay you with this interval, and they kind of set that kind of stuff up. And as you grow, you create your own thing, right, over the years. And then I think it's just great that they're a pipeline for you, right? And then people also will move from an agency and they'll move on to other companies. They'll either move to another agency or they'll move to another startup or they'll move to a enterprise client, and they'll be like, hey, I've got this great developer that I work with. He could help us with this project. And like, you just kind of, that's how I've organically grown. And that's the value that I see with agencies. And I mean, I like the people that are there. And honestly, I think we exploit that model, the fact that it's always this thing of like, they have a project that needs to get done and they need resources to get it done. If you can be a reliable resource for that to happen, whenever they can't use internal resources, they're going to come to you. So it's pretty natural.
And Josh, what led you to focus on agency partnerships?
I think it's just when you look behind the scenes of how an agency is run, it becomes super obvious because like we've all worked at agencies and we saw that the kind of open secret of agencies is that they don't do all of the work in-house. And there's a natural fluctuation of the work that they get. And when they have a lot of work, a lot of these agencies will either try to push off the client project as much as possible, or they'll bring in freelancers to do that work, either because they don't have the time or capacity right now, or just because they sometimes just don't even have that capability. And so from seeing that, being on the in-house side, I'm like, I want to be one of those guys because like they're doing it. And then like they're working with a bunch of different agencies and they have partnerships. So it was just an obvious choice. I mean, like to Brian's point, there's so many other benefits of just like, they know what you do because they're selling those services to their clients. And so like there's less selling and trying to like, you know, you work with clients who like don't understand design or don't understand all of your deliverables, and you have to like sell them on what you're doing and the value of it. And there's so much more hand holding versus an agency is like, yeah, we know what you do. Like we do it. We're doing it for other agencies. So like we understand the value and they're able to assess that you know what you're doing a lot faster. And to Brian's point as well, like they have a rotating amount of work that needs to get done. And so like, it's not just a one-off of like, you're designing someone's website for their e-commerce shop. Like they have new clients all the time. And if you're reliable and you're that go-to, they're going to keep sending you work. So it's just, it's an obvious choice for a lot of those reasons.
I think to expand on that just a smidge too, for Josh's point that he doesn't like to provide that value, that they can explain that value to you, is some people don't value UX and they just go straight into like design, right? So for Josh's skill set specifically, right, he is there to stop projects from becoming, can't swear in the shows, it's really hard, but cluster blanks. And you know, it was actually the agency that we were at, we had to hire in Josh because a lot of our projects were cluster blanks. We just had an art director, whatever. And so, you know, you can have people who are well versed in even explaining your skill set as a salesperson to explain it, because right, it's a completely different thing to explain what you do, but then to sell it and how to do that, and they're really good at that.
Yeah, definitely. Let's actually talk about challenges. I think when I first started working with agency partners quite a bit, probably the biggest challenge that I had was being able to show stuff in my portfolio. Because when you're working with agency partners, a lot of time you're working as kind of like a white label. You know, they expect, sometimes they'll expect you to be a part of meetings, or that you'll sit in and just like listen to like what the client has to say and everything. But they want you to sit in as if you are part of the agency, that you're not just, you know, a freelancer with your own business, but you're actually a member of the team. And that was always difficult for me because of the fact that I wasn't able to always show the work. Or some agencies, they, you know, didn't even want me to say that I worked with, you know, a specific client, you know, having like a logo in a logo pond and everything like that. What were some of the challenges that Josh, that you experienced or you've experienced over time working with agencies?
I mean, the things that you mentioned are very real things of just like agencies, because it is that open secret, is like, well, if you put in your work, then people will know that you did it when we said we did it, and we want to say that we did it. And so that becomes a little tricky of a situation. If you build a good relationship with agencies, and it depends on the type of work that you're doing, they will sometimes like, you're able to like have that conversation, be like, I want to show this work, and they will let you. And so that's kind of one of the ways I get around it. But like to your point, there is sometimes where like there's a good chunk of my work that I can never show in a portfolio.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So some of the other challenges is that like for me in that, like what Brian was saying, in that UX and strategy space, that now as I come into agencies and now as UX design has evolved, people kind of understand the process a little bit more. They now like know what wireframes are. And so another problem that I'll have is that I put a lot of value in like the process that I bring to solving this kind of like complex problem, or just even kind of digging in and kind of understanding the problem that we're solving. But when you work with an agency, sometimes by the time that they bring you in, they've already sold the client on a solution and sold them on the deliverables. And so rather than bringing your own process and your own way of solving it, you sometimes have to just slot in and just like do the deliverables that they've already committed to. And sometimes I'm able to like work that, and like the statement of work has been flexible around like what deliverables. It really depends on how they wrote their contract with the client. But sometimes like I'm not a huge fan of personas. I think there's much more efficient ways of getting those results. But if a client is signed off on personas with the client, I'm doing them. Like there's no getting around it. Like that's what I have to do. And so I would say like from my perspective, product design, like that's kind of my biggest problem that I have with agencies.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that there's definitely been moments where if I'm partnering with an agency who might be trying a new service that I might be an expert in, but they are not, they'll basically promise the client the world, or they'll promise them, you know,
what do you mean by
thing.
a service?
Yeah.
Like, so for instance, I've had partners with agencies that are a lot smaller. They're either web agencies or they're brand agencies, and they would bring me on specifically for illustration work. And
right. Okay. They're not well versed in talking about illustrations. Yeah.
Exactly. They don't know the process behind it. So they're basically, they're guessing, and they're trying to like see, okay, you know, so this is how it will work. And then when they come to me and I tell them how the process works, they're like, oh, we actually told the client that that was like included in the main scope after the fact, after we've already like started the project and everything. And so that can definitely, it can be very difficult.
Well, it's same with development as well. Like I'm working right now currently with a very, very good design agency, top tier. I've done some fantastic, like anyone who's listening's probably been on the site that they've designed. They win stuff at awards, but they're a design studio, right? And as far as I understand it, I'm the only developer that they contract with right now because of the quality of work that I do. They trust me to do it. But it was very, you know, had to work that trust in with them to be able to do it. But they also don't know how to speak or sell that kind. But like they've been in the industry for a long time, but there's like the nuances of your craft of like development and like how to explain to a client like ongoing support afterwards. Because design is like we're done, but it's like, well, no, development, like there's more stuff involved. There's like a whole process here. So yeah, absolutely. One of the challenges is educating the agency. Sometimes if you don't slot in with their service, is educating them on how things work, right? And being patient with them to understand that side of things. Because you want them as an advocate, right? Rather than an adversary in terms of selling 100%. Your services. Someone quote me on that, steal that too.
And that portion of what you mentioned is really important, because I have an agency that I partnered with for 8 years, and in the beginning, they were struggling with kind of that UX portion. And so back then, I rewrote their whole statement of work section regarding UX. And so like they based it off, because we had that problem of like, they promised things and they like overpromised the deliverables. And then like several projects later, they're like, you write this how you want to write that. And then we'll just do that since you're the one doing it anyway. So just write your portion. So I just copy and paste off of my contract into theirs.
I'm curious, in that situation, you know, with the fact that you were the one writing the script basically for them for this, did you try and leverage that so that way you became almost like the agency of record, sort of, so to speak, or the freelancer of record, to where they would keep coming back to you for these specific projects?
Yeah, I think is really key for working with any agency, is like to spread out your risk. You're not just partnering with one agency, you're partnering with several. And so by building that trust with these agencies, like the way that they work, again, kind of like showing how the sausage is made, is like they have their their Rolodex, or like they have their like tier list of who they're going to work with. And they work down the list to like check availability, because, you know, freelancers, we're only one person. And so they like, there's a good chance that we're busy with some other thing. We're not able to kick off the project right when they need it to kick off. And so they have their list of freelancers the same way that we have our list of agencies, and they work down the list. And so by building that trust, you become the first or second person in that list, so that you get like right of first refusal for any kind of potential projects.
Not only that, to you, the next level up for that, where I'm at with some clients and agencies that I've had for a long time, is that they will go actively seek out and find work for you to keep you retained as a resource. Because I'm very stretched thin, and I'm turning down work all the time because I don't have the bandwidth to take it on. And so
you have to learn to delegate.
Absolutely. Right. And that's probably a whole other conversation that we could have. But like, so because of that, right, that there's agencies I work with that I'm about to come off of a retainer right now, this month. And I've already sold the next one before they could slot it in. So they're coming to be like, hey, we want to keep you on. I'm like, I'm sorry. Like, but they're like, okay, when can we get you back in? Because if you become a really good, valuable resource to them and they can trust you, they know that they don't want to lose you either. Right. And so it's like, they will actively just like, they're going to get me in. And I've had projects where agencies were like, listen, this isn't because I like to do really cool, interactive things and, do storytelling through, marketing sites. And, anytime you see those pages that like probably make you motion sick, that move around and do that kind of stuff, that's the stuff that I like to get into. I don't always get those projects, but the agency will find it's like, hey, we're going to get you going so that you're getting paid and we keep you here. And then now we're going to find you, like, just to kind of keep that going. So it is great, definitely, to be a person of record as well, and the right to first refusal. And that's a fantastic position to be in. And then as you become more trusted, they'll be on your advocate for you out there, trying to keep you close, Because it works both ways. And we talked about this on another time, three of us, where it was the fear of saying no to an opportunity, right? And saying like,
yes.
And I told you guys before that I struggled with that, right? I really did, like, trying to say no, because I was so worried that like, hey, they're going to find another developer, right? Because agencies will continue to work with the person that they're comfortable working with. And it's like, we've got a new project. We can either give it to this person or we can give it to Brian. Well, we're already working with this person, right? And so I always tried to like maintain that. And so you talked about us being like globe-trotting, adventure men out here. And it's true. Like, I love to get out there and do stuff. Josh is climbing like freaking Mount Everest for whatever reason. And, I like to go
don't overpromise. I went to base camp. That's like a world
Hey,
apart.
that's still farther than
I got super nauseous, had to go home.
Don't mess around with altitude sickness, kids.
Josh will leave for like, a month or so at a time and go do stuff. I typically will try to find 2 weeks, 3 weeks here and there. But it was really like, I'd be out and I would be on vacation. I would get an agency lead and I'd be like, I'm sorry, I'm unavailable. I've lost agencies. I was gone for 2 weeks, and it was like, it's definitely a real fear. But then I've now that was a couple of years ago, and I've gotten better at those conversations. I've gotten better at managing those relationships and being able to maintain that a little further.
I think a key to having a successful like agency freelancer relationship is kind of understanding that balance. Is that like they have a bunch of freelancers that they go to. It's not just you. And the same way that you shouldn't have one agency that you rely on either.
Exactly.
And so it's kind of finding that balance between that FOMO of like, they might like stop using me. Like there's like no relationship lasts forever. And so it's finding that balance of like, the whole reason why we freelance is for this additional freedom and to be able to do this stuff. Yeah. For me to like go backpacking for a month in a foreign country is like the whole reason why I did this to begin with. And so to not be precious about those relationships and know that like, despite your best efforts, it could just end either because they finally decided that like, all right, we're giving Josh or Brian like 75% of the work of a full-time role. It's time to just hire for that. And sometimes that just goes away. Or sometimes they just decided to work with a different freelancer, and that's fine too. It happens. And so it's kind of finding that balance and just diversifying that kind of portfolio of people that you work with and maintain those relationships. And just know that even if you're on great terms with an agency, that could just end. And then they're just referrals for other stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I have very practical examples of that, of like doing a 6-figure project for somebody, or where I got the 6 figures out of the project, right? And it was really awesome. Client was so happy. It was a big project. It was executed great. Like the design was great. I didn't do the design, but like the design was cool. It was a really great project. Everybody was happy across the board, and I never worked with them again. I still don't know why. It's like going on a good first date and then you never hear from that person again, you know? And you're like, I don't.
Did you ever?
It's so true.
Yeah. But
did
like,
you ever reach out and ask?
Yeah, we've had conversations since then, and there's been like trickling in of like, oh, hey, maybe this thing and maybe this thing, and it's like, but there really
hasn't been another fit, right?
Yeah, but I mean, it was one of those things where it's like they should have realized how good this was and the value that they provided. Like honestly, it was such a good project, and we provided so much value that they should have been trying to find other ones. Which is like the good agencies will identify that and say, this is something I can repeat and I can provide this value, and I'm maximizing a ton of value here, and I should keep doing that. Instead, they were like, oh, we're going to like move a kind of different direction. I don't know. But like, I'm just saying, very tangible, what Josh is saying is like, you'll have great working relationships, teams that you even like, enjoy working with, and you'll never hear from them again. And if you have conversations that they'll be cordial, but nothing will ever manifest from it. So I've never made another dollar from them. It's not that like I never heard from them again, but like I never made another dollar from them.
I've definitely had those instances where like I've had many different agency partners over the years. One of my favorite ones I worked with I think we worked together for 2 years, all of a sudden just like completely dropped off the face of the earth. I've tried reaching out to them, never hear back. And it's just like, wow, okay, what happened? Sometimes you'll never know. Sometimes it will just happen where, you know, they'll have, you know, plenty of projects for you. And then in this instance, I think what might have happened was I think I said no to a couple of projects because at the time I'd stopped doing freelance, working on my NFT project, which was still in my mind a horrible decision.
Smart move.
But yeah,
to the moon, baby.
Yeah. So it's like in that situation, you know, I lost those opportunities. And I think also a couple of people that I worked with left the company. So that probably also contributed to it as well.
No, I was going to say like sometimes like that relationship is so fragile that it's like it was one person at that agency who reached out to you. And so, which is like a double-edged sword because like it could be really great because if you built a great relationship with that person, with how transient our industry is, with the average tenure of like a tech worker being like a year and a half at these like big tech companies, like, you know, the Googles and the Facebooks, like year and a half, like that's short. And so if you're freelancing for like, you know, how long we've been doing it, like 8, 9, 10 years, then those people are like 3 jobs away, you know, 4 jobs away. And if you built a good relationship, they'll bring you on to the next thing. I had a former boss that I worked with 12 years ago. No, 13 years ago, still sends me work like 4 jobs later.
Yeah, that's crazy. Yeah. And the strategy behind that too is to know that. So that's what I mentioned earlier about agencies is that they will leave and they'll bring you with them. But at the same time, like, and I've learned this lesson where I worked with an agency, they were best in class, amazing. And I was there at the very beginning with them, helped them. Like we were literally the first time I met them, we were in a closet, right? Like literally, and talking about some big project. And we went on to do some phenomenal work together. They would just send me all this like really cool stuff, projects that I'm very proud of still to this day. This is maybe like 6 years ago, but I was really good, a good relationship with the entire C-suite. But that company then sold, and the entire C-suite left, right? But it's like all the clout was there, and I was helping to build some of that clout, right, with them. They all moved on, and I still talk to those people, but I didn't maintain a relationship with the new people who were coming in. You know, I just kind of banked on those old ones. So now my strategy when I'm working with agencies, and this is your work just becomes so much easier this way, is to work the whole spectrum of everybody there, become friends with the designers, the developers, the salespeople, right? You got to focus on the people who are going to hire you for sure, right? But like build good relationships with everybody across the board because you want them to mention your name in the room that you're not in, right? Like, hey, we need a project. Let's go talk to Brian, right? It's like a designer should say that, or the like front desk person. You know what I mean? Like whoever whoever can bring your name up, right? And as long as it's genuine and authentic and you're kind of like, maintaining good relationships, then you can kind of keep that same agency. And then as that talent moves on, you can have that growth opportunity with wherever they're moving to, but then also maintaining the current agency.
Yeah. Let's actually backtrack. So this is something that Josh, you brought up, but how many agency partners should a freelancer kind of like shoot for having, or how many agencies should they be like reaching out to on a regular basis?
That's a great question. I don't know if I have just a number, just because the length of my projects being not only UX design, but focused on like product design. And I love doing they just got seed funding and they're building their first product. I love that kind of stuff. Or they just got funding, they need to redo their MVP. So my projects are 6 to 9 months long. And so I can maintain, 5 or 6 agencies, where Brian's projects are a lot quicker. And so I feel like he's so much better at maintaining and building relationships than I am. It's the thing that I'm trying to learn from him and take notes, is that like,
he's an expert for
sure. So like,
in my opinion too,
I definitely would. I'm curious to hear more from Brian's perspective, but like my pool is a lot smaller. But yeah, it's just, it goes a lot deeper for a handful of agencies.
Yeah. And Brian, what do you think?
I think it really depends on the type of work that you're doing, how you're providing your services. It's going to matter because you want to maintain, for your relationships, you need to maintain that you are a resource that's available to them. So just having those relationships, but never being able to work for them, it's not really that helpful to them. Right. Yeah. So I try to actually I strategically will position my relationships with people. Like I won't pursue an opening conversation with an agency if I don't think that I'm going to have availability anytime soon, because I don't want to start that conversation off on the wrong foot. Right. And so I really try to so the answer in terms of quantity is that you should definitely have more than one. It's better to diversify. I have made that mistake a couple of times in my career where I go all in on one company or one project. And even recently, as a year ago, I was pretty much all in on one client. And then you lose that client, something happens, and you've got to find a new, whole new thing. I'm now rediversified across several projects. I'm direct to client. So to answer your question earlier, you're saying like I kind of do less of it. I'm direct to client on a few, and I am through agencies on a few. And that's, again, following that same model. Some people move, like I just kind of, wherever those opportunities go, I try to capitalize on them. But overall, just maintain a couple. I think that throughout a year, if you can maintain 5, 6 to 10, relationships, you're just going to have opportunities coming in. Right. And that's, as you're finishing a project, you want that next thing lined up. But some people provide services ongoing. I even do that for development work. So I can work, many months in a row on a project where I'm just kind of churning out features. So it really, really depends on the work that you're doing, and how flexible you are in your workflow. And if you can tackle, so sometimes you will have to tackle, like, I need to be a resources agency right now. Like I have to strategically understand if I'm going to take on a project, it might not even be because I need the money now, right? Because it's likely not the case, but it's like, I need to maintain this relationship because it's not this $10,000 project. It's $80,000 to $100,000 worth of work over the course of my relationship with them. Right. So you have to, I look at clients that way, right? Is that like, I'm trying to look at this long term. And I think that it's a mutually beneficial way to look at it, because I'm trying to partner with them specifically to help them grow their agency through my services, right? That I provide. Like good development means that more people are going to come to them, right? They're going to get bigger projects as those go out because they can point to very successful projects that they've done, and it helps them grow their agency, et cetera, et cetera. So, yeah.
Yeah. I recently had an agency reach out about a project. It ended up not going through. However, they've already told me, and this is something you guys have probably heard too. They're like, oh, but we have a lot of projects down the line. We definitely want to work with you and everything.
Classic.
We'll see how that goes, right? Because it's kind of hot air at that point. Until they actually come to you with a project that closes, you can't expect that. And so I'm not going to sit there and like every week, just be like, hey, so those projects and everything, are you guys going to reach out? Instead, I'm going to have multiple other agencies, I follow up with like maybe once a month and be like, hey, so just working on capacity planning for the next quarter, how is everything looking on your end? Would you guys like to, do you guys have anything in the hopper that I might be able to help you with and everything and everything. And so that actually brings up a good question is, how do you identify and approach potential agencies? And this is something that we talk about in episode 39. And I'll be honest with you, I kind of stole this from Josh, the way that I describe it. But I would love to hear from the horse's mouth, so to speak. Like, how do you reach out to agencies, Josh?
Yeah. So I have a couple different methods. The one that Rocky's alluding to is back when I first moved to Denver, I still had I was freelancing at the time, and I had relationships with San Diego agencies because I was moved from San Diego to Denver, but I wanted to build up more relationship with Denver agencies. So what I did is basically I created a spreadsheet and I tried to find every design agency within like a 50-mile radius. And then I just looked through and looked at, like, for every design agency, they have their different specialties. They have their types of clients that they like working with. They have different capabilities. And so I would make notes on all those things, including like what size they were. And then based off of that information, I would create a cold email that was about 3 to 4 sentences long, basically saying like, hey, I'm a freelancer. Do you have any freelance work? And that was it. That was basically it. So that got me like lifetime value, probably $500,000 just from the cold emailing strategy, just because of all of the other things that we've talked about of like maintaining relationships and building that up and being that freelancer of record. That's been super huge. And then just, being part of like freelancer communities as well, of just like, as we get busy with work, we'll send it off to people that we can trust, that we know that we can, like, I know they're in good hands if I give a project to Rocky or I give a project to Brian, because, clients don't always know exactly what they need, and they'll reach out to me as a UX designer and say like, we need this programmed. I'm like, I'm not the guy for you, but I know the guy for you. Or like, great copywriters. I'm like, I got the girl for you. This is the best person for this type of thing. And, you just having that network, giving is, you'll get back what you give.
Yeah, it's actually funny too, because this week I have inquiries in from both of you guys. So I
know I saw that in the Slack. I messaged Rocky. I was like, "Look at you, man! Just farming all this work out. Harvested it up from us."
Literally.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah, literally in the Hustle Muscle Slack channel, plug again. Both of you independently posted like, hey, does anyone have any bandwidth for this project? Hey, I've got someone that's looking for this. And I jumped on it right instantly because, sometimes when you find those situations, you kind of have to jump on it. And so it's great to also like be able to share these opportunities with other people as well.
It's kind of funny that I've gotten messages because I've invited a lot of people to the Slack group over the years, right? So this group that we're talking about started off with literally it was Josh and I, and then Rocky, and then we added a few people over. I'd love to see some of those OGs come back, but we've grown over the years, and I've invited people in, and they think it's all developers in here. I'm like, no, you've got copywriters, you've got designers, you've got SEO experts, there are a couple of developers in here, but like developer doesn't mean developer. Like there's an iOS developer in there. There's a, Ruby developer in there. I do completely different development than that. Right. So it's like applications and websites and marketing and, there's all this kind of stuff.
Even if you look like the same on paper, like sometimes it's just not the type of project that you want, or you just don't have the capability for it.
Or that you specialize in.
Yeah, or you specialize in. It's just like there's so much more. Like people think about it as like, oh, we're competitors because we do the same thing, but it's really just like, I think this would be a much better person. And sometimes the project is just too big, and so I'd be like, hey, do you want to jump on this with me? And
right, I'll do that all the time. That's a great way. Like I will. I have bids right now. People are asking me for full design and builds of sites, which I can do. I've been doing that for years, but it's like, all right, I'm going to split this up. I'm going to grab a designer. you do the design, or I've done the thing, like, I really want to do the design of this and you do the build, right? And I like to run things that way sometimes, if I feel like, especially when I'm at the capacity that I'm at right now, and I look at something like, that's a beast of a project and I can't do all of that, but I could do a little bit of that, and so we try to split things up. It's great to have a community of people that can introduce you to things.
And that's what this all comes down to, is it comes down to community. It's a lot of times, and especially when I was coming up, going through college, through design school and everything, there was this like mentality that I would hear from professors where they were like, no one's going to want to share with you the secret sauce. You're going to have to figure things out the hard way and everything. And it never made sense to me. And the entire time I was in school, I was emailing and messaging illustrators, designers I looked up to, asking them, for advice. And for the most part, at least 50% followed up and responded and shared. And so it's why, like, I do this. It's why I have this podcast. It's why I'm part of communities like the Slack channel, why I'm on Twitter, why I'm always trying to create content, is because I want to share as much as possible and give back the way that people gave to me when I was a student. So it's definitely something that I think is very important for the creative community, is this openness that we have.
I always feel guilty when I see all of your stuff, knowing that like I also learned from all of these resources, but I'm like so bad at creating content the way that you are, where you're like, you're a machine.
Talking to me? You following me on?
You don't even have a website, bro.
I know, no website. No,
about like, Rocky. Rocky's like, he's a sharing machine.
It's a joke between us. I literally have nothing online. Rocky has the following.
But no, Brian, actually, so how do you go about finding agency partners?
Yeah. The first thing is that you have to look at who's going to hire you, right? And I think I mentioned that a little bit earlier, but you want to build those relationships. So I look at like, who's the person who's looking for resources to get shit done? CEOs of the agencies, your founders of the agencies, or it's a project manager, right? And I start from the top down, but like if it's a really large agency, you're not talking to the CEO. You're going to be talking to head of a division, or you're going to be talking to, depending again on the size, like maybe a project manager or somebody who does the combination of sales and project management. So I try to find those people. With boutique agencies, like I said, you're really kind of working kind of with a small team, and you can talk to those people. But one is just like, be where they are, be in the room with them. So I go to like meetup.com. I like to just go out. I mean, I love to learn. And so I'm in the Bay Area here. So going into San Francisco, I used to live in the city for many, many years. I'm just on the outside of it now, but I will go in and go to events, tech events. And like, I would go to Google. I would go to like WordPress meetups, because I was doing a lot of WordPress development. And I've met agencies there. I just had business cards, and I would talk to them and say like, hey, you guys are doing like WordPress sites. And I would just say, I'm here. I'm new in the Bay Area, because I was at the time. And like, I'm just trying to formulate some relationships. Like, if you guys need any work done, here's my card. And then they'd be like, oh, definitely have a chat. And also, if you're ever in person, make sure you both exchange information. You don't just want to hand yours over. You want to be able to also be able to follow up on your end and say like, hey, it's great meeting you. This is Brian Burkett. Make sure that like, here's my contact info if you need anything, or follow it up like, I'd love to get coffee, just a chat. Again, like, you have to assess where you are in that. And this is kind of where I will work that relationship depending on where my capacity is. So that's the strategy of like, if I'm really full, I've come across a potential lead, I will say, oh, I'm super busy right now, but I'd love to work with you guys in the future. Like, let's chat, like, let's grab coffee, and I'll really slow roll that relationship. But I just try to stay top of mind and just do like really small things. But I'll do stuff like when I was in London working with a client, I just jumped on a train up to Manchester, went up there, and there was an agency that we were working with at the time I was direct to client, and they were a dev agency. So I went up there, they were throwing an event. I just got in the room and just started talking to people. I'm just like, I'm just generally like love all this stuff. So it was like, I was talking to people, answering questions. It was a panel. And I was chiming in, and yeah, I made a lot of connections there. I do that kind of a thing. And even to the point, like, I was downtown in my little town here yesterday, and I went up to the Chamber of Commerce, had their little like booth set up, and I went over and was like, hey, what do you guys like? I don't really actually know anything about government, local government, whatever. I don't know how any of this works, but like, I've gone in and I've just like talked to shop owners around here because it's a small town, and I'm like, hey, making friends, and the thing I could like help out. Like, I don't have time right now, but like, if I could give you some advice. So I'll try to provide some value if I don't have the capacity. And I'm heading to I got invited to a meetup to go meet a bunch of business owners down here at the Chamber of Commerce later this week. Right. And so like, I just do stuff like that. And specifically for agencies looking for I'll look at portfolios, and I'll try to find like if they're doing work in the area that I want to do work in, I will message them and be like, hey, I love the work that you're doing. If for me, I have a very extensive portfolio at this point, so I can reference things like I've done similar things, or like, if it's a big brand, I can point to some big brand projects that I've done as well. Or if they're a scrappy small startup, like, hey, they work with startups, like I can show that portfolio to them. So
yeah,
just doing that, and then staying top of mind. Sorry, did you mention this spreadsheet, Josh? I know we've talked about it a zillion times. Yeah, that's something just to always have in your back pocket. Like, you can have a Rolodex of things that you can just hit.
Yeah.
We
Don't
consider
rely
it
on
a
your
money
memory
farm
for these kinds of things.
Yeah,
like,
especially my memory is so horrible.
Yes.
Oh,
yeah.
Yeah, no, I have my partnership directory, and it's something I'm actually rebooting now because it's something I let completely go over time, especially when I was not freelancing, not having my studio open, and I was working in house. Is I have a partnership directory, which every single person I interact with, that I've met at conferences, I've met at events, or that I've worked with in the past, are on this directory. Their email, their phone numbers, when was the last time I reached out to them, when is the next time that I should reach out to them. And so I use Notion, so I can actually set up to where, okay, I'm going to have it remind me on this specific date, I need to reach out to Brian. On this specific date, I need to reach out to Josh. And so I'll have like 5 people a day basically that I need to reach out to. And it's not like, oh, hey, do you guys need help with something? It's usually like, hey, how's everything going? I remember last time we chatted, you were talking about X, how's that going? And have you thought about Y? Things like that. And it's those types of interactions that makes such a bigger difference than just the common, like, hey, do you guys need help with something? Hey, I'm available right now if you guys need any help. Let those conversations be natural and organic. And 9 times out of 10, they are going to organically ask you, hey, so how's everything going, freelancing, or how's everything going with your business? So you just have to wait for them to come to that. If they don't, that's okay. They're not interested. They have their own things. They might be busy. So you can let that conversation fizzle out, come back to it in a month, come back to it in, 3 months. And everything. That's how I like to look at it.
I would also say to provide value to, like, if I find something that I think would be helpful to somebody, an article, or I'll try to just send that over to them. Or like if I see them posting on LinkedIn that they've just launched a project, like, it's very genuine for me. Like, I'm very proud of that. Like, if an agency's done something cool, like if I'm not part of the project, I'll like it. I'll share it around to other people. I just try to be, a part of the team, as much as you can.
I think value is the biggest thing that people don't think about, that especially freelancers and especially younger freelancers, they don't think about the fact that providing value isn't monetary. It's providing things like sharing articles, sharing praise. That's like a big part too, is just sharing praise. Like, you see someone that you've worked with in the past and they have a successful launch, or they, worked with another agency and rebranded, and now it's like they're ready for the next, year of funding and everything. And just like reaching out to them, just like, hey, I saw that you worked with, so-and-so agency. The work looks amazing. Congratulations. This is just, I'm so excited for you. And I actually recently had someone, respond.
As long as you're genuine too.
Yeah, as long as you're genuine, you're not just like being fake. I had someone, follow up when I did that recently, and they're like, "Thank you so much. Like, it was such a lot of work and everything. Hey, we actually might have a project coming up in the next couple of weeks that we could use your help with."
Yeah.
So it's like, you do that. You're giving them something, and you're providing value, even if it's just an ego boost, or congratulations, and it really, really helps out.
Yeah. Another way to think about that is that people will keep working with people they enjoy being around. And so, like, whether that's just being supportive and helping them, or helping them work through problems, or even just like boosting their stuff on social media, like just being an enjoyable person, like they'll send you more work. And so like it's the same thing.
That's such a life hack. Just be an enjoyable person.
Yeah, just be enjoyable to be around. Like like I've talked to like, you know, I love to help other freelancers and like coach them, whatnot. And I was talking to this one person and like I had worked with them and then they had gone off like at a agency and then they had gone off and started freelancing. And I had to have like a heart to heart and be like, you're really argumentative. And like, you're kind of like, you're quick to fight and tell people no.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't matter if you're right. Whip smart person, like crazy smart. But I'm like, people don't like it when you do it that way.
Mm-hmm.
Like, like it's, and so like you're doing all the right things, incredibly smart, incredibly educated, like master's degree level.
Mm-hmm.
And just like, but you're not getting referrals because people don't like working with you. I'm sorry. Like you argue rather than guide. And so like, I think that's a huge thing. It's just like, I think that's just kind of the overarching of like everything that Rocky's doing, that he has intention, but just even in all the interactions that you have, just be enjoyable to work with.
Yeah. I mean,
be around.
I think that's like developer 101 because like developers are usually people like, no, you can't, that doesn't work that way and blah, blah, blah. So I've learned that skill set as a developer to be like, I don't want to come to the table and say, no, we can't do it. But like, help me understand what we're trying to achieve. Let me help you come to the right conclusion. You know, I mean, sometimes things come to me fully spec'd, but like, I'll have to be like, no, we can't achieve this. But like, if you explain to me what it is you want to do, I will help you come to that same conclusion. Right. And so it's like, they now trust me as an expert to guide that instead of being somebody who's like causes a lot of friction and, you know, all that kind of shit.
One thing that I tell people all the time is that I am not a yes person. I will say no in the appropriate situation. I will not say yes to every single thing, every single change. I will not say yes to every single request and everything. And, you know, once I started telling people, nor should you, because it's like, that's the wrong way of going about it. When I was a young freelancer, oh yes, you better be, you bet your bottom dollar, I would say yes to every single thing, every little change and everything. But, you know, even recently when I was working in-house at a company, and I told every single person that was interviewed me at the beginning, like, I am not a yes person. I will challenge. I will ask questions. I will, you know, get to the bottom of it, to the point where after I was hired on, there was one stakeholder in particular that was notorious for, you know, basically wanting everything done his way and everything. And I, you know, told him straight off, I'm not going to say yes to everything. I'm going to push back. I'm going to ask you these questions. I want to make sure that what we're doing isn't for you, but it's for the brand, for the company, for the clients. And he really respected that, to the point where I literally would tell him no on calls in front of all these other people. And someone messaged me one day and they were like, what is it like to say no to him? Please just and say it slowly, please. So it's an interesting like interaction to see.
Well, can I add to that too, that it's a strategy. It's like know when to hold them and know when to fold them, because I think
exactly
don't always throw friction. Like there's times when there's dumb ideas and you know, it's just like, okay, like I'm just, fine, we'll do what you want to do. And like, because you also want to just like, if you always are throwing friction into the thing, it's like, all right, I don't trust that you're like, you know, really speaking your mind when you need to be spoken. You're just like kind of always speaking your mind. So I try to like definitely push back when it's appropriate to push back, but like also like you are a contractor, you are a freelancer, you know, while it's up to us to kind of do the work that we want to do. Like I've had to, you know, for example, in code, like I was going through a bunch of code reviews one time and, you know, it's like, how do you write code? And like, I finally had to be like, listen, I'm writing code the way that I want to write code, because this is what we have to do under the timeline that we have. And I write very good code, but they were trying to standardize everything. And to the point where like all of the CSS needed to be alphabetized. And like, I was like, all right, that's just going too far, because I know why they're trying to do that. Right. And like, so things are searchable and like more consistent, but it was like, I don't have time to alphabetize my code. Like I write my CSS in statements that like I understand where sizing is, and then I get into the typography, you know. And so it's like I have a method here behind it. And I find it's like that's too far. But up until that point, right, I was going along with everything until it was like, all right, now you're just causing too much friction. But, you know, sometimes I'm just like, yeah, fine, whatever, I'll do it. And you want to give those wins too. And that builds that relationship. Yeah. That's the masterclass. And, you know, I could probably do a masterclass on all these little nuanced relationship things that happen.
Relationships.
Yeah.
I subscribe to that.
Yeah, I think it also comes down to also the type of relationship, right? Or the type of relationship, but also the type of engagement. If you're working directly with a startup, then yes, you can like, you know, be that person that says no or challenges. But if you're working with an agency who's then working directly with a client, you now have a whole nother layer to it, to where you can't necessarily.
Would you mind if I spoke to that, Rocky? Because I actually wrote that down in my notes as we were talking, because I think it's a very important point. And I was going to say I want to get to this before we wrap up. But working with an agency is a very specific relationship that you have, right? Mm-hmm. They have their business, right? And it can get very complicated. But the gist of it is they have their client, right? And they're usually direct to client, right? And that's where it can get more complicated. The agency might not even be direct to client. So you're a freelancer, you're a contractor, you are a business owner, right? Like you're in there operating your business. And so you have to do things to maintain your business, right? And so you're not an employee for them, but you also have to understand this very intricate relationship in that, like if I'm on a call with somebody and a client requests something, right, that's out of scope, or they want a different time, or they want to set a meeting or something, like, you know, it's the fact that the agency and I now have to communicate, because if scope is changing on a project, right, and we're in the middle of it, it's like I have to then go scope that out and give them a cost estimate of how much it's going to cost for me to do it, so that they can bring that back. So we can't, as a freelancer, I can't have that conversation generally on the call. So we have to come up with ways to say it. And to your guys' point, you really shouldn't ever let the client know that you are a freelancer. I had that happen many times in my career where they have found out, and almost inevitably everybody tries to shortcut the agency. Never do that. Yeah. Do not ever do that. If you know that will come up, you got to stick with your agency. It's just the ethics of it. It's going to build that relationship. Trust me. Like at the end of the day, even if like the opportunity is so good with the client, like it's really not worth doing that. You don't want to be known for that. You know, like kind of like we brought them in and they stole our client from us. Even if it's not the way that it goes down, it's the perception of it sometimes, right? And so it's the saying is, right, dance with the one that brung you. So I've had many clients who come to me after the fact and say like, hey, we want to work with you on the side. I'm like, no, it's through the agency. If you want to do that, I'm sorry. Unless they're willing to, you know, forego that. And sometimes they will. They're like, yeah, you go take that client. We're kind of done with them, whatever. But you need to understand that complicated business model. When you're in those conversations, right, you have to guide those conversations and make sure, because the CEO might ask something on a call, or a client might ask something on a call, right? And you have to be ready to be like, okay, we're going to go talk about that. We'll put some hours behind it. You might have to estimate something on the call, but then don't put like a dollar amount to it if you can. You'll learn this as you get into it, right? But like that's the part where it's like, oh, I can't. Like I had one client recently fired the entire design team of the retainer that we were on. It was like, I want to like triple Brian's hours and we need more, whatever. I'm like, I don't have that time available because I'm on other projects, you know, but I didn't make it seem like it was without, like, I was like, my hours are scoped the way that they are so that I can support other projects. But it wasn't about like, you know, I had to kind of guide that where I wasn't lying about it, but like agencies want you to represent them to the point where I used to have to get up at like 4 a.m. and catch a flight all the way down to Southern California to be at a meeting, just because the agency didn't want to say that I didn't live in Southern California, wasn't, you know, I was a contractor, right? And you just have that is the model, right? And it's to grow their business and to grow their thing. So understanding the fact that you know that you have to have those nuanced conversations like on the side, and there's that level of like, and when the client's talking to somebody, they can't even decide, if you're not in the room, they have to go and like, we're going to go talk to Rocky and see what we can get done, right? And so it does things take longer, so you have to account for that as well, like into your timelines and into things like, and then feedback loops, right? Like if it's like, oh, we're going to do another round of revisions, but that extra round is out of scope, and you know, how are we going to scope that out? So just kind of consider that as you're going into these new agency relationships. If you haven't worked before, or if you have been working with them, hopefully you've never told them that you were a freelancer, because that would be a very bad thing to do.
Yeah. So I'm going to actually share a story in a second, but before I do, I'm going to just preface this so you can both have some moments to think about your answers to this. But the last question I'm going to ask you to is, what are like 3 pieces of advice to share with freelancers who are interested in building relationships with agencies, or just in general, 3 tips that you would give them. In the meantime, though, I'm going to share this embarrassing story. It's something that's very cringeworthy to me. It's my own personal bad experience that was completely my fault. Most of us, when we talk about these stories, we don't want to share this openly, and I feel like this is a great learning experience. Basically, do not do this whatsoever, and it really relates to what Brian was talking about. I had an agency partner, and this was like a small agency of one type situation. Worked with them for years, and we had this one particular client. I think this was like during the pandemic or right before the pandemic that this happened. And we were working on this whole thing with this like major client. It was their client that they've worked with for years. We're talking like probably worth hundreds of thousands of dollars, like definitely well into the 6 figures. And the biggest issue was that the main stakeholder that we were working with left. Like they just completely dropped off. Someone came in to replace them, and the person was very opinionated. And, I can be very opinionated. And so when you have 2 people, they butt heads like that. And so what ended up happening was the person came in, wanted to completely change the scope, the ideas, like just completely restart, refused to alter the budget. And we were 75% of the way through.
I remember this when it was happening. I remember this.
Yeah. Yeah. And so it was very difficult because, we had to have me and my client, we had to have conversations, and we had, I basically was of the mind that we have to push back. We can't just like go in and do a bunch of free work without, at least some compensation. And mind you, I was offering like, just increase the budget 10%. It wasn't like, we need to completely double the budget, just increase it 10%. We can all live with that. We're good. She refused. And she was like, we were butting heads, and my poor client, he didn't know what to do. He's like, you're right, but I can also see her side of the story of it. I'm not going to get into like the huge details of it, but what ended up happening was the project got completely canceled. We got paid what the original budget was, but not a penny more. And that client lost that client completely because of
the agency lost the client.
The agency lost the client completely. And I have yet to work with them. It's been, I think, 3 years or so since then. I still talk to him and everything, but there's no hope of ever having him as a client again because of, I kind of cost him, that client. And so it's something that's always cringeworthy to me to think about it, because I'm like, it's the darkest moment for client relations to me when I did it. And you made me remember it, Brian, when you were just bringing that up.
Yes,
but I feel like
I don't remember this.
No, but in just what you're talking about, the fact that, they are your client's client,
yeah,
and everything. And so the reason why I share that story is because I want people to understand that you will make mistakes. You 100% will make mistakes. Hopefully not that big of a mistake. But it's okay as long as you learn from it. Now I've learned from it to the point where I understand that relationship when you're working with an agency, you are having to basically be more accommodating because you are not the one talking to their client. They are the one that owns that client. If you screw up or if you say the wrong thing, it's, their butts on the line, not necessarily yours, because you can just go on to another agency and everything. So
yeah, it's their reputation on the line.
100%. So, all right, now let's get back to the final question. So, who wants to go first?
Yeah, I would say if you're working with agencies, the three things that I just jotted down as we were talking. I guess I'll pick up because one of these relates to what you were saying is I think it's finding ways to grow the agency itself. So what I mean by that is, as I've been doing this for a long time, so I can identify growth opportunities and share that with an agency owner or a salesperson and be like, hey, we could sell, this service, or we could do that kind of thing. So that's one aspect, right? You can help them like think about the way that you're providing your services better and how to work better with them. But to grow them is to grow that client relationship, right? Like, can we get more hours out of them? Is this project going to be so, successful enough that it's going to bring in additional work down the line? I want to make sure that like it's the same organic growth there, that the client that for the agency, their client might have people who are leaving that company and would reference that client again, or that agency again, right? And so you're trying to really maintain this growth atmosphere across the board so that your agency that you're working with has that same opportunity of growth like I have working with them, and tangentially like kind of through the client from them, like that if somebody at a client, so like, sorry, this is that multi-layered problem because my client is the agency, right? But their client, right? Yep. So if their client is somebody there leaves, they might come to me later, that's this other place, and say like, hey, I've got this person, Brian, right? And you kind of have to figure out those relationships yourself. Like, okay, this is the ex-VP of this company coming to me where you should have gone to the agency. Like, how do I feel about this? That's up to you to kind of determine how you want to handle those things. But like, you have those growth opportunities too. But like, you also do want to bring them back to the agency. Like I said, the agency is going to cover a lot of things for you. They're going to cover like the sales stuff for you. The biggest thing is like project management and allocating resources to you, and the potential ability to have people to tap into, like as a developer, if I'm working in something like, hey, I'm struggling with something on this platform, can I talk to your dev team to help out? So you want to maintain that relationship and let them grow, right? And so that's the number one thing, is to really kind of be as focused as you can, service focused for your agency, make their life easy, right? And then make their life with the client easy, so that it's a very easy next step for them to grow that relationship, like get those more retainer clients, right? Or like get more hours on the book, or get that next project, or partition things from a V1 to a V2, and like put yourself in that position to do all of those versions, right? Potentially. So that's one. To facilitate that generally and facilitate a good relationship, it's all about relationship building with agencies, right? It's all trust. In order to establish trust, you need to communicate well and communicate often. I've gotten to the point where I can now know where deadlines are, and I kind of get a sense from my project manager and kind of how they operate, of when they're going to ask for status updates. Really good project managers will let you know up front and won't just surprise you out of the blue and say, how are things going, right? Because that's never a good message to send if you're a project manager. Never just arbitrarily 100%. Ask for something, right? For anybody who makes stuff, like, we need to know what needs to be done and when, and like, let me deal with that, right? But you want to communicate early and often. So I try to get ahead of that, and I try to anticipate kind of where a project needs to be, because you have to identify, like, it's not only that this has to be done by Wednesday. If we're deploying this, like, I do code, if I'm deploying this on a Wednesday, like, I actually have to have this done by like Friday, because that's when they're going to be asking me, like, how are we looking for next week? And like, can we start demoing this or whatever, right? So understanding that, so communicating well, communicating often with them on those status updates, getting ahead of those so that they can feel comfortable. And like, you don't have to over communicate, but like, and you kind of figure that out. I would say this, you guys will laugh at this, but like, I side with over communication, because I feel like I'd rather them have the details and parse through it, right, than not have that information and let them make that information. But you get good at kind of understanding like how much detail to provide and how much not, because you can make a client's head spin if you provide too much information about like a very in-depth thing like development. Like, hey, I'm having a problem with like local storage and it's not da-da-da-da-da. It's like, they're like, I don't know, I'm a project manager. Like, what does that help me with? So that's one. And then the last one is just getting the job done. Do it 100%. Like, you have to hit your, like, whatever those deadlines are, you have to hit them. I remember speaking to one agency, and I was like, this is a long time ago. I was like deep in like hustle culture. And it was like, I told them, I was like, I will literally die for my deadlines. Like, I will push my ass as hard as my butt as hard as I can to hit that deadline, right? Because I want to also be counted on as a reliable resource. Because reliability in an agency is absolutely key. Can I rely on you to do your part? Do it to the degree and the quality that we've defined for it, right? And is it delivered on time? So if you can deliver quality, you can deliver it on time. If you communicate well and often, right? And if you, a little bit of your own project management there is required, right? Like you have to kind of get that. And then if you can find ways to grow their relationships with them, like you were going to, it's a no brainer of them wanting to come with you, and why you can understand why other people might want to work with you down the line. Cause you're just like, this guy gets stuff done,
100%. All right. And Josh, what 3 tips do you have?
I think the first thing I would say is just reach out to agencies. There's so many people who are afraid of like cold emailing or, reaching out without having an introduction. But like I said, like these are companies who know what you do, and there's a good chance
and need
that
what you do.
Exactly. And so it's just like we're all kind of cringe when we get like a cold like call, but the problem with those is that it's always because you're not the audience. When you are the audience, it's welcome, because that's work that they don't have to do of finding someone. And so I would say if you're on the fence about it, reach out to them, because most of the time the worst answer you'll get is silence. Like, I've never got anyone like, I have never got a
never
angry that I reached out, but they've always like, sometimes you'll get the polite, like, we don't have anything right now, but we'll keep you in mind. And that's like a no. Sometimes it's yes, but like most of the time you'll get silence. And so like, if you're afraid of that, I would say just do it. So that'd be my first thing. Second thing is it's related to what Brian's said. It's like, take complete ownership of your work. Like you should be able to manage yourself without a project manager, because they will treat you more like a partner and less like a contractor. They want someone that they can put in front of the client to be able to talk about their own work, because if they just need someone to do the work, they have plenty of in-house people. They want someone who's like client facing. And I think there's so much value that you could do of being able to, like Brian said, being able to communicate not only with the agency, but on behalf of the agency is huge. And that just makes you so much more valuable. And related to that, it's just like, I've always said that if you just say what you're going to deliver and then you deliver on time, you're beating 80% of freelancers out there.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Because you're beating everybody. You're beating everybody in the house too. People don't hit their deadlines internally. Are you kidding me?
Exactly. Jeez. Like if there's one thing that you could do, it's just hit your deadlines, because they like the agency's reputation with their client is based off of that kind of stuff. And so it trickles up or trickles down. And so they have to like, it's not just you making excuses for yourself, but the agency then has to go make excuses to their client, which doesn't make them look good.
Yes, that's a horrible position to be in.
And so now you've put them in a horrible situation, and they'll remember that when they think about the next time that they have a project. And then just in that kind of idea, in a more general way of just like, remember you're on the side of the agency and that you're representing them. And so to like, for the good and the bad, it's just like what Rocky was saying, like you're white labeling your work, but you're kind of white labeling yourself. You're representing the agency in those things. And to really think about it as like, you're in the trenches with them. And so Rocky had his horror story of like that kind of client project. I've had 2 projects like that happened like that with Fortune 500 companies. And that's not a good place to be in. And so it became a thing of like, all right, I'm with the agency. What are we going to do to work this out? Like we have to have a united front when we present this to the client, and doing your best to do that. Sometimes it's untenable. You can't do that. And then you kind of have to protect yourself from the agency who's just like, we'll grind it out, where you have to protect yourself as a company. But but for the most part, like remember that you're representing the client. You're representing that agency to the client. And so being in that problem together in the worst of it, but then also what Brian's really good at is when he has that client relationship, seeing opportunities and saying, hey, have you guys thought about offering your client this? And this is something that I've done because I have a developer background. And so I work more with development agencies who have no UX capacity or design capacity whatsoever. And now I'm the only person that they know that could do design. And so they'll take on projects so that they can work with me and I can be that representative and I can do that. And so in the worst, it's just like, remember you're in it together and trying your best to resolve it as a cohesive front. And then in the best of times, being able to do things to move their business forward is something that I highly recommend, because now you're truly treated like a partner rather than just a resource to crank things out.
Yeah.
May I add a couple of points that Josh made me think about, I think might be kind of useful to consider is one, to avoid agencies that are chaos machines. There are those out there that operate. So you want to find agencies that have good structure, good organization. I worked with one agency recently that, like I said, that they didn't really do development. So they didn't have good structure and good management of this at all. And I worked with them to establish that. But if they hadn't worked with me on that, right, it would have been like, this is too much chaos to deal with. Like, you know, I've had clients, if they're sending me emails plus Slack messages plus tickets plus this, I'm like, I got to unify communication, right? I could gather look at one spot. So those are the agencies can help. They can make your life more difficult or they can make it easier. So you want to try and find those agencies that can control that chaos. And then Josh made me think of something that is incredibly important, actually, is that you're speaking on behalf of the agency, but also don't speak directly to your client without permission of that agency. So I will run everything through my project manager or whoever is the representative of it, and make sure that they sign off on everything, even if it's a no-brainer. Like, hey, I'm going to do this right now. Are you cool with this? Or like, maybe we should say this or that. Even if it's something I can do, I will tee them up to do it or get their permission to do it and say, like, I can message them if you want. I can have that conversation for you. You know, but you got to let them strategize that relationship. So you can provide them those opportunities, but it's up to them at the end of the day of how they're going to do it. And they might not agree with you, and they might, you know, do something different. But that's their relationship to manage. You know.
Yeah. Definitely. All right. Awesome, guys. Well, thank you guys so much by the way, for everyone who's listening and watching this is actually our second time recording this because of some issues with Brian's video and audio.
Not the platform that you chose that had all the bugs on it.
Yeah. So this is, I think, technically our third guest episode since I revamped the podcast. And we first were using one software. Now we're using another. This one seems to actually be doing pretty good overall. I don't think hopefully there's no, fingers crossed.
Hey, can I give a shout out to whoever designed this at Riverside? We're using Riverside FM. I don't know if we're allowed to plug that or not, but like the 3-up view that we have right now talking to each other is amazing. Like it's so much. I have this full screen and so bravo to whoever did that. I think this is how all video calls should be from now on. Why do I have a wide angle? It's just like, you know?
Yeah. I give my product designer stamp of approval to Riverside.
Yeah. It's just, I really like this too, because I can also have a script above your heads where I can actually have all my questions laid out, and I don't have to like have a separate like notepad off to the side or something like that.
Yeah. Great job, design team over at the Riverside.
Yeah. Definitely helps. But also, so let's just quick, Josh, I know that you have a plug for something that you want to share.
Yeah. So, I mean, we've talked a lot about like how to freelance and all of this stuff. And so me doing this for 9 years, I decided to, rather than doing a bunch of one-on-ones with a bunch of freelancers to help them out and meet them for coffee and talk about their problems, I took all of the common questions that I get for freelancing, and I've created a course that's just how to break into freelancing as a designer. So if you've been on the fence about it, you're listening to the podcast or you're reading blog posts and you're not too sure about breaking in or where to start or how to put together all of the information, I created a course for that. And so for Design Break listeners, I've given a 20% off. There is a code down in the description or in the show notes or wherever you're listening, and you can get that down there.
Awesome. And I will also give my stamp of approval. Josh is not a fake freelance guru. I have gained so much knowledge from him and Brian over the years. So he is definitely does not fall into that category. In fact, that's actually a discussion we are currently having in the Hustle Muscle Slack channel. Again, link down below. I think the link will be live for maybe 30 days from the posting of this. But if you guys listen to this podcast after that point, reach out to me over on DMs at the Design Break on Twitter, and I will definitely get you a link. But we're talking about beware of fake freelance gurus, and people are actually starting to share different people's accounts like, hey, does this guy qualify as a fake freelance guru? It's actually pretty interesting. I don't want to openly talk about these accounts, but at least on this platform, I think on a Slack platform, it's a lot easier to do that because you're not like publicly calling these people out.
I mean, I've literally gone to I went to a freelancing panel here in the city, and everybody, not a single person on the panel was a freelancer. And the advice I heard from there, I literally stormed out of there afterwards. I was so angry. It was all people that were up there who like ran like freelancing platforms. It was like the chief marketing officer for Upwork or something like that. I don't even know. Like, I'm making that up. So sorry, it's not Upwork or whatever. But like it was people who were like supporting freelancing platforms, but had absolutely no idea, had never freelanced before. And the advice that they were giving to people in the audience who were like trying to break into freelancing was horrible. So definitely avoid that stuff.
Yeah. I'm looking forward to that podcast episode, Rocky.
Oh, well, it actually is already out. The Beware of Fake Freelance Gurus episode number 36, I believe. Yep.
Oh, man,
that one's out. I'm sure that there's going to be more content about that because of how prevalent it is right now. It's getting ridiculous.
Oh, Brian, I mean, like, yeah, his story is not irregular. Like, there's so much stuff. We're like, yeah, we need like a guide of just like bullet points of just like how to spot them.
Yeah, I had I think I did 8 red flags to watch out for. But now, as I'm seeing more and more of them pop up on Twitter is like the biggest hotbed for this. I'm still calling it Twitter. I'm not calling it X because that's stupid. Yeah. But I'm not an Elon Musk fan at all.
I am. I love Elon.
But no, I feel like I could probably do a like top 50 red flags for spotting a fake freelance guru. It's just ridiculous. Maybe I'll have you guys help me write that one. But yeah,
I'd like to.
Brian,
I could rant forever on that.
Right? Brian, any plugs or anything like that you'd like to share? The man without a website.
I've got nothing to plug. I have remained in the shadows for many, many years. It is something that I am actively working on coming out of shadows. I've got a lot of wealth of information I'd love to share with people. I think freelancing it's been such a wonderful experience for me, and I wish more people were able to do it and knew how to do it. I am actually working on trying to generate a course right now and get that stuff out there. So if you want to follow along, you can follow me on Twitter. My Twitter handle is just at Brian Burkett, BrianBurkett. Link in the show notes. Is this going to be on YouTube? Can I point to something and say it's over there? No, probably not.
Below, right?
Below.
Yeah, the show notes are already
below.
There you go.
If you spin around in a circle and chant out loud, you'll be directed to the website. There's a QR code at your feet if you look down. Someone out there looked down. Yeah. So imagine someone out there actually looks down and sees a QR code. They're going to be like, holy shit. I'd like to get out there a little bit more. It's definitely something that I love sharing information and knowledge and growing a community. So join us in Hustle Muscle. If you get in there, just drop a little note in the introductions about who you are, what you do, and feel free to ask any questions in there. And over the course of the next couple of months, throughout the rest of the year, I'm going to be starting to get a lot of my knowledge out there and sharing it with people. It's due to all of the layoffs, and everything that's going on. I think that there's if it's freelancing is not for everybody. But I think there's definitely people out there that should be doing it. I think that it benefits all of us as a humanity. I don't know why we have certain people locked away. I have some of the most talented engineers, friends of mine, who are working on nonsense at some of these bigger companies. And I would love to get some of that talent out actually doing some good in the world. So I'm going to endeavor to do that over the next year. We'll see what we get.
Yeah, when I got laid off back in November of 2022, the first place I went to was the Hustle Muscle Slack channel and just trying to revive it, because we went for a couple of years. Yeah, like we went a couple of years where we weren't really engaging on it too much. I think there was a couple times where Brian tried to revive it, Josh tried to revive it, and
it's going pretty good now for a while.
Yeah, that's the problem. Is like we get too. It suffers from success as well, because like when a bunch of freelancers are quiet, they're busy. They're fully slammed. Like we don't have teams be like, keep running the social media channel. Well, it's like, it's us.
You know what changed for this time around is I did my first ever post on social media ever, just to like announce. I was on LinkedIn and I saw everybody getting laid off, and I just put a post after like, hey, if you've been laid off or you're like scared you're going to get laid off, like come join, like send me an email and I'll get you. We got a ton of people that joined in there, and it's just been going, and I've been riding that wave a little bit more. It's, I realize that it's an important thing for a lot of people now, besides just us. So taking it a lot more seriously.
Yeah, 100%. Well, thank you guys so much for, giving me your time, especially a second time around with the first time not going so well. We're going to try to salvage some of the content from that episode, because there are some questions that I didn't ask this time around. So I'm sure that we'll have some bits that we can share, at least like in smaller form content, in the near future. But thanks again,
TikTok
guys. For
Reels, baby.
Oh yeah. For years I stayed away from TikTok, and now my content manager has got me posting.
Can somebody please get Rocky to do a TikTok dance, please?
That never will happen in a billion years. Rocky and from like college days,
I'm going to get you to do a dance one day. Listen, one day,
$20,000, and I'll do
everybody
a dance.
Who's out there. Maybe it will be $20,000. I'm going to get it done though. There's a mission now. I'm going to get you to do. Maybe I'll be in it with you. We'll figure it out.
But yeah, thank you guys so much for tuning in. For those of you who are listening to the podcast, please be sure to hit that subscribe button, and make sure to, I know that if you're tuning in to YouTube, subscribe, like, comment, turn on notifications. If you have any questions whatsoever about what we discussed in this episode or other episodes, please send me a DM on Twitter at The Design Break, or even my personal Twitter at Rocky Roark. We're actually switching things up now. The original Design Break YouTube channel, we're moving everything over to my own personal YouTube channel at Rocky Roark. We made the decision just because more people are viewing stuff on my channel than on theirs, just to help with the growth of the channel overall. If you would like to get a special shout out during a normal episode, not a interview episode, be sure to leave us a rating and review on Apple Podcasts, or engage with us on Twitter. Again, thank you, Brian. Thank you, Josh, for helping out with this, and for giving me your time on a Sunday. We're recording this on a Sunday, and Brian's about ready to go to a river.
Taking my dog to go for a swim, and then I got to go come home and do some API work. So,
so awesome! Thank you guys so much. You guys can say bye if you want.
Bye.
Thanks, Rocky. Later.
Yeah. Thanks.
All right, awesome. And always remember, people, to stay passionate, stay positive, and stay creative. That's it for us this time around. We will see you later. Bye.